Good morning, everybody. So I'm here in South Wales now that I've moved from London and then Oxford. So yes, I will set your expectations. This is my first ever webinar, so do be gentle with me. I'll be doing a PowerPoint presentation to you. But firstly, I would like to thank Val for coming along, and I'll introduce her a little bit later in the presentation. You may recognise her already. She's from the Safer to Wake campaign, and if you've got any children, you might have been looking into her work and what she's been doing. Also, I'd like to thank Tania and Rachel and the Vaccine Control Group in general for what they have done for me. My father was in a care home last year, and I would not have been able to visit him. He died in August, but I would not have been able to visit him if it were not for this little card. I mean, and what this has done for me has just been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm tearing up, but I'm really, really grateful to the Vaccine Control Group, and I'd like to thank them for bringing me on here today. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at my presentation. And I think I would just like to say also that we are very much, as the control group, we're very much into the science and backing up everything that we've been talking about, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So we'll be doing a little bit of a dive into a lot of the studies and the research that's been done about Yamoa. So bear with me. I will be trying to keep everything in layman's terms. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not an immunologist, but I understand the paper, and I've tried to sort of just glean from the papers enough information for you to understand that there is a real valid scientific backing for what this product has been doing for people for the last 24 years that I've been involved in it. So moving ahead, let me share my screen. And, okay. So can everybody see that? It's just a screen that says it's a bit about me. So we're just going to go into who I am in a little bit. So I did my degree in fine art back in Middlesex University. I was a bit of all-rounder at school, and so decided to follow my passion. But I left not really feeling confident in the, sorry, somebody's got there. Not feeling very confident in the sort of contemporary art world in London, so I left that. I had an interest in natural health because I'd suffered while I was on my course with Candida, severe thrush, and my mum took me to an allergy tester who basically said I needed to go on an elimination diet, and that's where I started avid label reading and really worrying about what I was putting into my body. So I then studied at the Mary Martin School of Reflexology and became a practitioner in reflexology, qualified in 1995, and had a practice, a very busy practice in Chiswick in London. And I worked alongside Mary Martin in her practice as well, so I got a lot of more in-depth information from her and techniques and everything. So I did quite well in that field. Then I had my son, and I needed to find another way of earning money because I wanted to be a full-time mum. So I couldn't carry on with my practice, and circumstances meant I had to leave London anyway. And that's when I met Jerry. I set up the official Yamoa website that was then incorporated as Not the Norm in 2003, and I diversified after the credit crunch to include more products alongside Yamoa. So as you can see, I've got quite a good rep on Trustpilot, so, and ethical consumer. So then I had two children. One's 24, one's 17. They've had no jabs throughout their lives. They've got no allergies. They're never ill. They were rarely ever off school, and they flew through the childhood illnesses. And also my daughter is home educated, so that's another reason that Val and I have a good connection there. She's, you know, she's involved in home educated children. So I've got an actual family history that's also in health. And when I look back and I think, my gosh, pretty much everybody in my immediate family are involved in health one way or another. Ironically, my paternal grandfather worked for 25 years for Wellcome, and he was in the development of veterinary products, and then became a dispensing chemist along with my paternal grandmother. So they were both dispensing chemists. And my mother was a career nurse in the NHS from the age of 16, and she then retired disillusioned with doctors that she felt were killing off her patients. They didn't have bedside manners, and there was an increased amount of admin when they introduced computers. So they'd do a full day's work in the district and then have to go back to the health centre and spend hours inputting data into computerised records. She then left and became a bathing services manager at Age Concern in Kensington and Chelsea, and then a reflexologist and a kinesiologist allergy testing. So that's what she went on to do. So she was already looking at an alternative way of health. My maternal grandfather was a dental surgeon in Harley Street, and he actually treated the Queen of Norway and even Churchill. So that was quite an interesting background as well. And my maternal grandmother was a botanist, ironically, as well. So my father founded the HOCL Trust. That's the HOCL Trust for Hygiene and Safer Water. It's a charity of which I'm also a trustee. And that's a whole other presentation. And then my brother's now developing innovative CBD technology over in Canada. So we have a whole family of interest in health generally. So just to let you know that this obviously is not medical advice. I'm going to be presenting facts. Everybody's an individual and everybody has their own health issues, and will always have to do your own research and consult your own physician one way or another. Don't take everything that I say as read, just go and do your own research, which I think we've all learnt to do over the last few years. So this intriguing tree, basically Phantomia elastica is the tree, and it's a Ghanaian tree. It was used in the African rubber industry for many years. And there you can see that's a Phantomia elastica plantation, and that's back from 1911. So it's a fast growing, quite slim tree. You can see it goes up to 30 meters, and it's basically quite common around West Africa and the tropical regions over there. And let's see, so there are two different types of the Phantomia tree. There's Phantomia africana and Phantomia elastica. And Phantomia elastica is the one that we're talking about. That's the silk rubber tree, also known as Lagos rubber, and it's the West African rubber tree. And it's named Phantomia after the Ghanaian name for the tree, which is Funtum. So that's the two trees are very easily confused. So you have to really know what you're looking for. The Phantomia elastica tree has a totally different sort of substance in the bark, which is the silk rubber, when you compare it to the Phantomia africana, which doesn't have that presence. So there are two sources of Phantomia elastica, but only one is the one that is used for traditional remedies. So yes, Phantomia elastica has healing history. It's used as a traditional medicine, and traditional medicines in Africa are generally used by the population for the large part still. So the bark is astringent, and it's been used for treating hemorrhoids, as well as painful menstruation, excessive mucus. It's used as a laxative and a worming agent. We know something else that's used as a worming agent, don't we? It's also very, very effective. So, and the leaf and the bark are used. The leaf mixed with another tree is used to treat male infertility, and also used for sexually transmitted diseases such as syphilis and gonorrhea. So it's an antibacterial. And predominantly we use the Phantomia elastica tree for respiratory conditions. We haven't actually tried it out with whooping cough, but it's also used for respiratory diseases such as asthma and hay fever. And also the leaf is used to treat wounds, which other studies have been done for that, but we won't be going into that now because I haven't got any experience with that at all. So I don't know if you can see my little window that I'm moving around without saying. I'm just moving it around so I can see the screen properly. So let's look at the press. Yes, when I first met Jerry, Yamoa had been in the press quite a lot the year before. So this is the information that he had been putting out before I actually met him. So lots of things in the press. This is mid to late 1990s. I hadn't actually met Jerry yet, and yeah, he was already making headlines in some small newspapers and things. This was actually later in 2001 in the Daily Mail. So how did I meet Jerry? I met Jerry through another chap, and when he first told me about his product, I was intrigued. And I had a bunch of clients from my reflexology practice who I knew had suffered from respiratory allergies. So I asked Jerry, I bought a few of the samples off him and I gave them to my clients, and they all reported phenomenal results, which I hadn't anticipated. But Jerry came across as such a genuine person, and his struggles were real in terms of trying to get this product recognized. And so I decided to help him, and I would stay up from sort of 10 o'clock at night when my son had gone to bed till about 2 o'clock in the morning building a website, which was the official Yamoa website, just to help him try and get it out to the masses. So this is a letter that he had received the year before I met him, from Tom Biggs, who was the area health and safety rep. Jerry was a postal worker at 9 Elms sorting office. And I'm going to play you a little video in a minute, which has been on YouTube for a while, where he's actually interviewed, and you can take a look at that. But this is the result of Jerry giving his powder to his colleagues at the 9 Elms sorting office, and the result was, Tom Biggs wrote to him and says, "With regards to your Yamoa powder for asthmatics, I am pleased to be able to report that a number of my members have come to me praising the effectiveness of your product. This is a welcome cure for asthma." And this is the area health and safety rep for the Communication Workers Union, which is quite phenomenal, really. So we've got this letter from him. So this was a result of Jerry giving his colleagues, this is Jerry here, giving his colleagues his product. They all threw away their inhalers, which is quite phenomenal. That's Jerry at Royal Mail. So I'm just going to, it's a short video, Mary Nightingale. I'm just going to play this video for you.
For a post office worker from Croydon who's been given the remedy by his grandmother in Ghana. It's called Yamoa powder, and Jerry at Yamoa claims it's so successful that asthma sufferers are throwing out their inhalers.
This is it, the bark of a tree that grows in Ghana, and Jerry Yamoa is importing it, he says, to cure the UK of asthma.
It's a totally natural substance that's made from the bark of a unique gum tree found in West Africa, and it contains no additives. I know it works because people that have used it have come back to say it's good. I've got letters to people, and I'm still getting letters from people.
Jerry comes from a distinguished background. His father was tribal chief, but it was his grandmother who held all the medicinal secrets.
I remember as a boy, people in my village that suffer from asthma and hay fever. They were every Friday for this medicine.
Jerry still has his day job at the post office, and appalled by the number of his workmates who use inhalers for asthma or hay fever, he decided to try his remedy on them first.
I took the herbal remedy, the Yamoa powder. I took it for a whole month without failure, and then since then, I've not had an attack of asthma for the last 2 years now.
I took it and I've not had anything since. No symptoms.
I just took one course of it and I found it was okay. There's no tightness of the chest, no itchy nose, no runny eyes or anything like that.
The results of this unscientific but nevertheless impressive trial were unanimous. They all binned their inhalers. From then on, Jerry tried to persuade drug companies to do proper trials. They're not interested.
I wrote to them, explained to them that they should take this product because it's unique and it's going to help millions of asthmatic sufferers. But I got replies that they weren't prepared to pursue the matter.
He can, however, sell it as a food supplement, dissolved in honey and easy to take in tea twice a day.
I think really nice. So is sort of a woody taste. Not bad at all.
Whether or not Yamoa tea cures asthma, Jerry's grandma certainly gave good advice. The youngest person to die in their family was 90. She died at 107. In Croydon, this is Liz Wickham for London Today.
Sounds like a recommendation, doesn't it? Dr. Michael Rudolph is a consultant at Ealing Hospital's Department of Respiratory Medicine. What do you think? Could this be a cure for asthma?
Well, it certainly sounds interesting, but I think we've seen lots of substances like this in the past. Anecdote is very interesting. There may be something in it, but I think anything like this has to be put to a proper scientific test and make sure it just isn't having a simple placebo effect, like a dummy tablet or water or anything like that.
Expect you to be sceptical, you see. The medical profession always are, aren't you?
Yeah, we're always skeptical, but we've got a long tradition of many of our current medicines originally came out of herbs and plants and twigs and branches. That's where future medicines may come from, but I think they have to be assessed for safety and effectiveness in a scientific fashion.
So you don't approve of people throwing away their inhalers, in other
I
words?
think it would be risky to suggest people use an untried new treatment and throw away their conventional treatment.
Now, you're saying it might work because of the placebo effect, but isn't that just as valid as any other effect? I mean, if it works, use it, surely.
If something works, absolutely. The trouble with placebo effects is they don't carry on forever. And in terms of the underlying abnormality in asthma, they may make people feel better, but it's leaving the underlying disease undertreated. And in the long run, that's potentially dangerous.
Because asthma is on the increase, isn't it?
It's certainly increasing both in incidence and severity.
Because of pollution?
Possibly because of pollution. That's certainly one of the things that's making it a lot worse here.
So what's your advice then to asthma sufferers? What should they do?
If given this new compound to try, or in general?
In any case, in general, what should they do?
I think in general to always take recommended medications. There are new treatments coming along all the time. Combinations of treatments are very effective. And I think we should all keep an open mind about any sort of new complementary medicine, which might have the potential to help some asthma sufferers.
Yes, a bit of Yamoa powder on the side might not go amiss.
Right.
All right, Dr. Rudolph, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So yes, let's move on. So what does the science say? This is what we really need to know. Okay, so when Dr. Rudolph was questioning Yamoa, no real scientific papers had actually been written about Yamoa, but it's been 25 years now, and there's quite a lot of information that's been coming out. And just to let you know, none of these studies have been commissioned by either myself or Jerry's family. It's all been Google alerts that I've received that have told me that these papers have been written. So then I've investigated them further. So let's have a look and see what we've got. Yeah, also a while back, Dr. Nigel Eccles, who you may know, I think he's been quite involved in sort of COVID, sort of, waking people up to what's going on. He actually he used Yamoa quite a lot in his practice. And he did a survey by questionnaire, 120. What is it? So this was the file that he put all the results in, and I've just proceeded them very, very briefly. So there were 120 participants, Of the hay fever results, 77% markedly improved, of which 43% claimed to receive a cure. And the asthma results were similar, 69% markedly improved, of which 29% claimed a cure. So, and he said, it seems that taking it for 1 or 2 months seems to do the trick. So research over the last 2 decades, let's have a look at it. So initially, much of the research was actually focused in Africa, and it was focused on looking for a solution to the chloroquine-resistant malaria. And I found studies between 2005 and 2009 in the Ivory Coast, which were showing promising results, and we'll have a look at that. The reason being, I want you to see that it's not just for spiritualities, but it has potential for a lot of other quite serious diseases as well. So then around 2008, researchers at Montana State University started looking at trying to find compounds in plants to stimulate the innate immunity. And they are looking for things that they could use to sell as drugs. So they looked initially into plant tannins. They then found some novel polysaccharides, and then they investigated how that stimulates the innate immunity via gamma delta T cells. And they concluded that their mode of action for asthma specifically and other things is the Th1, Th2 response, which we'll go into. So this is the first paper that I could find that is actually about looking for treatments for malaria in West Africa. So the study took 33 West African plants and tried to find which ones could actually be used for the treatment of malaria, which ones had antiplasmodial activity, which is, you know, against parasites. So they extracted, they took extracts from 33 of these plants, which were commonly used by traditional healers in West Africa, looking for the antiparasitic activity of each and whether there was any toxicity to any of the human or rat cell lines that they were using in their studies. And they found that 5 plants demonstrated very good antiplasmodial activity and had a weak toxicity to cells. Phantomia elastica was identified as one of them. It hadn't actually been discovered in the past as having any antiplasmodial activity. So this discovery was entirely novel. And they state in their paper, several extracts are of particular interest, associating a good antiplasmodial activity with a low cytotoxicity, including the stem bark extract of Phantomia elastica. So then this was actually research also done by the same group. So isolation, characterization, antiplasmodial activity of Phantomia elastica specifically. So this is the paper. And they found that the most virulent single-celled organism that causes malaria, severe clinical malaria and death, has become increasingly resistant to the standard anti-malarial drugs such as chloroquine. So they are looking for new antiplasmodial drugs with a new mode of action so that it can actually be effective. And they found that 4 steroidal alkaloids were isolated from Phantomia elastica, and that they exhibited in vitro, which means in the glass, so in the test tube as it were, activity against the chloroquine-resistant Plasmodium falciparum with weak toxicity to rat cell lines. So they're not finding toxicity, and they're finding it that 4 of these steroidal alkaloids were actually really quite effective. So that was in vitro, not in vivo. So that's not in the actual human being, that's in the tests in the lab. So they could be used as lead compounds for the synthesis of novel antiplasmodial agents with improved activity. Evaluation of in vivo antiplasmodial activity is being undertaken. So then this group did go on to actually test these isolates, these steroidal isolates, against the blood. So they took the blood samples from infected patients and they tested against the chloroquine. So they used the chloroquine to test and the plant extracts, including Phantomia elastica. So Phantomia elastica wasn't alone, it was being tested amongst other plants. And they say, looking at the results, chemical, pharmacological, and galenic studies should be considered so as to avail drugs made from these plants that are affordable and meet the criteria of safety, security, and efficiency. So that's quite a background before they start looking at asthma and hay fever, etc. So this is the beginning of a series of studies that were done by the team at the Department of Immunology over at the Montana State University. And they're starting to look to see if they can find things that actually contribute the gamma delta T cells. So these are the T cells that are mainly in the mucosal linings in the body. So epithelial cells in the sort of in the mouth and the throat and the lungs, gut. So they found that several plant-derived products with anecdotal health benefits stimulate the cells that function early in protection from disease or an innate immunity. So these are the cells that are sort of first responders, as it were. They sought products that stimulated the gamma delta T cells, which are an enigmatic cell with innate immune properties. And this is where this paper is where they're actually seeking a grant to find these treatments and prophylactics to enhance innate immunity of calves against a strain of salmonella to which they're actually quite susceptible. One dietary supplement called Yamoa that contained bioactive components comprised of complex polysaccharides, carbohydrates, that stimulate aspects of innate immune function. This is where they're first acknowledging that Yamoa has these attributes and that they're looking to further study the Yamoa. So then they discovered that the polysaccharides they're looking at in Yamoa actually do prime the gamma delta T cells in the lab, and they enhance innate immune responses in life. So to determine the compounds that stimulated the innate immune response, so they are looking for these specific compounds now, and specific compounds that actually trigger these gamma delta T cells into action. And they found that these polysaccharides suggest mechanisms for the anecdotal positive effects. So they're finding that what they're studying is actually endorsing the anecdotal responses that we've been putting out on our website, for example, and that they show potential for application in innate protection from disease. Specific stimulation of human gamma delta T cells with Yamoa is potentially relevant in asthma and may be warranted as a novel approach in the field. And adjuvants contained in Yamoa may have similar stimulatory activity on immune cells as do other innate adjuvants, with no evidence of toxic or other adverse effects. So they're already seeing that there's no cytotoxicity, there's no toxicity to the cells that they can determine, which we know. We already know that. I've been working with this product for 25 years and no red flags. So Pharmaceutical Biology 2013, this is another paper done by another group, again in Africa, and they are looking at the antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties of Phantomia elastica. So I'm just bringing this up to show that it's not just the gamma delta T cells that are being triggered, but there are all the antiplasmodial qualities of the product, but also it's been determined to have antimicrobial against bacteria, etc., and anti-inflammatory properties as well. So there's a whole mix of things going on. So they found that that Phantomia elastica, both the leaves and the bark, did inhibit the test organisms that they were looking at, which is Candida albicans. I wish I'd known that back in the day, and E. coli, which is quite a difficult thing to nail. So, oops, missed that. Sorry. So this is another paper that was brought out looking at the stem bark and finding a way of optimizing taking out the polyphenols, which are notoriously difficult to sort of isolate, but they have actually been able to isolate these. So the phenolic compounds considered an arduous task due to the complexity of the phenols. So a lot of researchers have found that they struggle trying to get the phenols out of a product. So they were looking at ways of being able to extract these from Phantomia elastica. The phenols are in a high sort of dietary intake of fruit and vegetables and cereals. You get a decreased rate in chronic diseases, and they believe that these phenolic compounds do have a responsibility, at least in part, for these health effects. The rich phenolic content of stem bark Phantomia elastica points to its potential as a functional medicinal product to alleviate diseases caused by oxidative stress, such as asthma, breathing disorders, inflammation, and cardiovascular diseases. So this is Jodie Hedges, and at this point, I'm already in communication with her because I've seen her papers. She and her team at Montana State University, and I'm sort of asking her to sort of trace down what she's been finding until now. So we have an email back and forth basically, and at this point, this is sort of around 2009-10. Well, actually it's probably a bit later than that, it's about 2011-12, but they were beginning to hypothesize that what's happening with Yamoa and the gamma delta T cells is that the product's actually tilting the immune response from a Th2 to a Th1 response. So Th2 is like an abnormal response, and Th1 is a more normal response. So it's sort of resolving people's Th2 issues. So she says at this point, they say that they hadn't yet proven that this is the case, but this is the hypothesis based on the fact that they'd already published a report that describes the immunoactive fraction in Yamoa as polysaccharides, these novel carbohydrates, and that digesting polysaccharides is generally known now from many other sources, many other studies, that consuming these polysaccharides does result in a shift from Th1 immunity from the Th2, and that it's been repeatedly shown to alleviate asthma and allergies. And it seems that this is very likely that this is what Yamoa is doing. Their preliminary data is consistent with the hypothesis, but they still assume that the polysaccharides in Yamoa are unique and particularly effective. So slightly different to others. So this is another paper that they went into after they'd studied Yamoa for a while. They realized they were having issues sort of isolating the compounds. Again, Yamoa is quite a complex product, and they found that acai fruit, acai berry, had the same kind of polysaccharides without the difficulty of isolating those compounds. So they went on then to continue studying the acai fruit. So they said this was a further study on polysaccharides derived from the acai berries, as the polysaccharides in Yamoa were trickier to access for study. And they say, as discussed in Graf et al., Yamoa is purported to be beneficial in asthma. Asthma is associated with exaggerated Th2 cytokine response. I've priced this down quite a lot. There's a lot more involved in it, but since therapies to increase Th1 responses can alleviate asthma symptoms, we originally proposed that the anecdotal asthma benefits might be a result of tipping the gamma delta T cell cytokine balance in the lung towards a Th1 response. We provide for the first time mechanistic evidence for the potential benefit of some plant polysaccharides by driving Th1 responses in the lungs. So resolving people's underlying Th2 response, which is an abnormal response caused by whether it could be genetics, whether it could be vaccines, who knows, it could be anything, but essentially they're getting a Th2 response, which is an abnormal response, and Yamoa seems to be resolving that back to a Th1 response on a cellular level. So this is again a further communication with Jodie. And she says that after they've gone through that Akai paper, basically you've maybe heard of the hygiene hypothesis, that we're actually supposed to be exposed to certain immune stresses as kids for a healthy immune system. When we don't get this, sometimes the immune system gets tilted to inappropriate responses. These Th2 responses that were supposed to work toward getting rid of worms and parasites, never see those anymore, react inappropriately to other stuff, causing asthma and hay fever. So that's her hypothesis of what had been happening with people. So interestingly, they then this team in 2020 they produced a chapter in a book called the book was called Mucosal Vaccines, 2nd edition, Innovation for Prevention of Infectious Diseases in 2022, and their whole chapter is actually dedicated to harnessing gamma delta T cells as natural immune modulators, and they highlight their plant polysaccharides as gamma delta T cell targeted immunomodulators. The first source of polysaccharide agonist was Phantomia elastica bark. Yamoa polysaccharides activate gamma delta T cells as well as other immune cells such as monocytes, and when given in vivo, enhance protection from infection. So they are actually confirming that the gamma delta T cell action of Phantomia elastica seems to actually help prevent infection as well, which is quite an interesting piece of work. So then I think we might have already covered this one. Maybe we haven't. Might have put this in by accident. No, okay. So actually, no, this is, yeah, I think I've duplicated this. So we've already gone over this, basically. Antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties of Phantomia elastica. Both the leaf and bark extracts showed antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activities, and these pharmacological properties may be responsible for the ethno-medicinal uses of the leaves and the stem bark of the tree, of the plant. So yeah, just showing you that essentially there are many compounds in Yamoa, and it seems to have a very sort of broad effect in lots of different ways. And we know that inflammation of the lungs is the response of asthma. So all these things combined, probably what's actually helping Yamoa do the trick for people. So let's move on. So I had one question. So with Jodie, I wanted to know what her hypothesis was in terms of safety with Yamoa. So I asked, some of your conclusions state Yamoa appears safe and non-toxic, but what results, cellular activity in your research can you point to that can help me to validate, emphasize these comments? And she said, basically, that the Yamoa primes the cells to better respond to other signals. It doesn't cause inflammatory cytokines, and they're not a source of strong damaging cytokines. So the gamma delta T cells and the killer cells, they're basically anti-inflammatory in many situations, and polysaccharides may enhance that capacity as well. Whereas macrophages are not known for this, but also do not appear to be a primary target for these polysaccharides. And if they were, we would see more inflammation, not less. So this is probably why a lot of people are being able to take the product and not having any sort of adverse reactions from doing so. So this is also another paper that we're nearly finished with the papers, by the way. This this is another paper that one of my customers actually highlighted to me. He wrote me an email saying, well, I'm busy here drinking my Yamoa tea and reading a paper about harnessing gamma delta T cells for innate immunity during this pandemic. And then I thought, gamma delta T cells, I'm sure I've heard about that with Yamoa. So he looked up some of the papers on Yamoa, and he was very happy to discover that Yamoa also is what's sort of provoking these gamma delta T cells into action. So this is a paper written in 2021, I think it was, in Frontiers of Immunology. And they basically say the gamma delta T cells represent an attractive target to stimulate for a rapid and effective resolution for viral infections. That has multiple antiviral functions and capacity to react quickly to prevent viral spread. And this isn't Phantomia elastica, this is gamma delta T cells, remember. And it says the varied characteristics of gamma delta T cells support their role in controlling viral diseases in general and COVID-19 in particular. We're advocating for better inclusion of gamma delta T cells in the therapeutic armamentarium, or the armory, against viral infections. So they do believe that a focus should be on gamma delta T cell for helping with viruses. So we've gone through some of the science. I hope you didn't find it too tedious, but it's very important to back up everything that people have been saying about this product. It's all very well saying anecdotal evidence is fine, but when you've got actual backup for it as well in science, then it gives it a much stronger argument, as you know. So I'd like to introduce Val at this point, and Val and I have got a long history, which I hadn't actually realized who Val was for a while until I started following the Safer to Wait campaign for children. And my children are pretty much grown up now, but I always look at these kinds of things with a view to passing on the information to my customers. You know, if I find anything interesting for customers, then I will pass it on. And I saw a video of Val talking about the Safer to Wait campaign. I thought, Val Fraser, that's a name I recognised. And I looked back through my orders and I saw that Val had been ordering for many years. And also I recognised her face from a video that she'd sent me 7 years ago, which has been on YouTube ever since. It was a video testimonial about her experience with Yamoa, which she will talk about in a minute. And so I got in touch with her. She was about to go to the Better Way conference as the Safer to Wait campaigner, and I asked her to distribute some Yamoa for me to some of the doctors there, including Dr. Tess Laurie and other doctors there. So I will quieten myself down now and let Val speak.
If you'd like to unmute yourself, Val.
Yeah, can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I should point out, yes, I can call myself Dr. Val Fraser, but I'm not a medical doctor. I have a PhD in education, and that's been my professional life. So I've been obviously working with children, for children, and communicating with their parents in order to encourage a child to be at their very best potential in all areas. And alongside all my professional life, and almost for as long as my professional life, I've been a hobbyist really in natural health for myself. And then when I had 2 children, my children are 31 and 28, been aware of trying to work around what could be unnecessary and sometimes harmful conventional products when there might be other things available. But of course, I haven't completely eschewed conventional medicine at all. I came across, and my children also have never had childhood vaccines. And I know that's quite unusual given how old they are. But that evidence was there then. It must have been, if I found it. And I came across it because I had prevented myself when pregnant from having a course of antibiotics for a urine infection. I'd gone to see a homeopath and it worked. I hadn't actually ever tried homeopathy before. And when my 6-week daughter was colicky, I took her to a homeopath rather than have the baby Gaviscon or whatever the doctor wanted. And again, that worked. But it was the conversation, and it's always these chance encounters, aren't they? When I was leaving the consultation room with the homeopath, who was also a GP, and he said to me, when is she having her jabs? And I said, well, she's 6 weeks and they're calling them at 8 weeks. I hadn't actually questioned jabs before then. And he just said, well, I'm not saying don't, but why don't you wait till 13 weeks? Because that's what it's always been until recently. And I said, and he said, and it's been done really because GPs need to make their targets of 90%, and people could move house within the first 13 weeks of a child's life, but they very rarely move house within the first 8 weeks of having a new child. I said, oh, so it wasn't a clinical decision, it's been an administrative decision and a financial decision. And he said, oh, it's far from a clinical decision. The blood-brain barrier doesn't form in children until 13 weeks. Well, that just took my breath away, and that enabled me to, and I confirmed it with my own GP then. I asked and he said, yeah, I don't know why they've done this, but why don't you wait till she's 13 weeks? But that gave me 7 weeks. I work in a university. I'm not a scientist, but I had access to all of that. And yeah, I just decided they weren't ever going to, and they never have had to. They've had the childhood illnesses and so on. So that was the basis upon which when my son, so I've had hay fever since a teenager and I tried everything else I could, but I hadn't been successful at really relieving it. And certainly it remained quite significant, if not severe. I was never asthmatic, actually. And it looked like my son, who was, well, he didn't seem to have hay fever, but every cold went to his chest. And we managed to treat it until he got to about 5. And it was really quite worrying. And I took him to the GP. And there you go, there was a prescription for an inhaler. And I was stumped, really. I didn't know what to do. And it's interesting because these things crop up, don't they, at the point you need them. And Tania and I still can't quite work out how I got to know about her, because I thought it was through a publication called What Doctors Don't Tell You that I got monthly. But again, we can't quite piece it together. She wondered if I'd read the Mail article. Well, I'm not a Mail subscriber, but that doesn't mean I didn't pick it up when I was in the gym or something. But anyway, it was a landline. It was about asthma and hay fever. And I called her and we had a conversation. And I can tell you that my son was 5 and he was born in 1994. So 1999, I must have been, if not your first client, I was very soon your client. And it came in a powder. It didn't come as capsules. So I ordered it, a month's supply for my son. I have to disagree with the reporter who said, oh, this is quite nice. It was foul. It was the most bitter powder ever. And the only way I could get him to take it is put it in a teaspoon of jam twice a day. And I can remember we were on holiday. And what was interesting was he never wheezed again after that month treatment. So then I started taking it for my hay fever. I have to take it seasonally every year. I have to have a course of about 2 months. He never seemed to have to need it again. He never wheezed. If he had colds, they were very minor, and then go to his chest. And in the last 5 or 6 years, actually, he has had mild hay fever. So now he does take it seasonally, often pinching my supplies, I should say. So then the reason Tania and I reconnected, I mean, I used to, if Tania ever processed my order, I sometimes would get a high val, but it wasn't always her that processed it. So I just got into this. I was a client, I ordered, sometimes I got a note back from Tania. And then when COVID hit, I was able to take early retirement from the university I worked at. And of course, things combined, working with children, natural health, COVID injections, I've got to do something. I've got to use whatever skills I've got of communicating with parents. So I helped co-found the Safer to Wait campaign, which is an informed consent campaign for parents to read, giving them the facts, which I'd got endorsed by various medical doctors I was connected to. And the Stand in the Park organisation ensured that I could get that campaign across the whole country, because we had boots on the ground and we were delivering leaflets through letterboxes. We have one of the lowest vaccination rates in the developed world for children, and certainly for the 5 to 11s, and it was never actually rolled out to the 0 to 5. Anyway, I won't go on any more about that, but just to say that's what Tania had heard about. And we reconnected and went, oh, not just a client now, we're actually could be working together. So that's my testimonial from, using a wonderful product. And I would like to encourage anyone who's got children particularly to give it a go.
Hey, thank you so much, Val. Yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful to actually connect with you properly, not only over this, but you know, I think we've got so much in common, really, in terms of our interests, particularly with kids. So I really appreciate you. And I understand you'll be hopefully coming on and doing a presentation yourself for the Safe to Wait campaign with the vaccine group. So
yeah, and all the ways that you can build a healthy immune system naturally in children. So hopefully a wider range than just stopping COVID jabs.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you.
Can I just interject? Somebody's got an off-topic question for Val, if that's okay for us to ask you.
While she's on, yeah.
I'll just read it out. So it says, great talk, really refreshing. Would like to ask Val a slightly off-topic question regarding friends from our local support/health group in Norwich. We have parents trying to confront a school/college as their 16-year-old and peers are not allowed to touch anyone. This is a school policy. His friend was punished with a 10-minute detention for touching his mate's shoulder. Any thoughts on how to approach the college?
I would go to my friend and fellow sort of campaigner in these times. She is called Dr. Liz Evans. She runs a website called UK MFA, Medical Freedom Alliance, UK MFA. She's got all the template letters for work, for schools, for colleges. She's certainly got it on mask, and she's certainly got it on all the evidence. Now, that's a really strange one, because I haven't heard about the no touching thing, but that comes under presumably the social distancing. What I would do is, if you can't find the exact letter, that loads of template letters, then what I would do is I would email Liz and she will advise you.
That's wonderful, Val. Thank you so much for that. Tania, there's a couple of questions coming in for you. Are you ready for questions now?
Sure, yeah.
So Norma says, thank you. This has been so helpful. I get hay fever and mild asthma and work with adults with respiratory conditions. I wonder if it would be good for COPD.
Right, now, actually that leads on to my next couple of slides. So predominantly we have been focusing on asthma and hay fever because that's the large majority of sort of feedback that we're getting. Generally, things like COPD, emphysema, they don't tend to be allergy related, and therefore we just haven't had enough people taking it to warrant claiming, or not that we make any claims, it's all our customers that make the claims really, but to warrant sort of marketing it for that in any way. But let me just lead you on to the next few things, and hopefully the next few slides, and hopefully it will sort of highlight that there are other things responding to Yamoa. It's not just respiratory allergies. So just let me cover these slides and I should be able to answer that question for her. So going back to Dr. Michael Rudolph's concerns 25 years ago, is it just placebo? I don't think it is. It's been working for people with lots of different conditions, particularly with children and with animals even. So how that can be placebo, Yeah, I don't know how that works with young children who don't even know that their parents are sneaking it into their food, and certainly with things like horses and cats, they don't know. So yeah, I think placebo is blown out the water, really. But yes, in terms of working with other things, I just wanted to highlight that Val's not the only one who has a child who responded really well. This is a particularly this is an email that I received for children, for a child that hadn't been able to play with his friends or go outdoors, run around, do anything. And he then took it, and this, it basically gave his childhood back. So he, this is not an isolated incident. This is many. These are the kinds of emails that I've been getting for many years. This was the testimonial. You can see that, right?
Yes, we can.
That I was talking about. This is like one of the many emails that were received in my time involved with Yamoa. This is another one, again, childhood. Grandson was on a breathing machine, inhaler and pills, skinny and sickly. He was 3 years old, and having seen my older grandson go to hospital with asthma many times before he was 8 and almost dying, we were heartsick to see it happening again. Saw Yamoa in Dr. David Williams' newsletter. What can I say? After 2 months on your capsules, he's never had another attack. He's now 16. So he was 3. That was 13 years he'd had after 2 months. Thank you for sharing your secret with so many others. It has made such a difference in our lives. And thank Dr. Williams for informing so many. I tell everyone I can about your almost miracle product. And this is one about horses. So she had a horse that was on steroids after a bad bout of COPD, and he's doing well. This is quite a while ago. I was just bringing these out to show you that there are different things. So this is getting onto the COPD. So this chap, he had been diagnosed with COPD. He was going lots of testing, etc. And he was participating in a pulmonary rehab program 3 times a week for a couple of years, and he started taking Yamoa, and after 3 months his oxygen saturation had gone up from around 78 to upper 80s, and he said the wheezing and bronchial tightness that he'd experienced is largely gone. His rehab nurse and doctor have been quite impressed with the sudden improvement. He assumes that Yamoa is mostly responsible because it was the most identifiable change in his regimen, unlikely linked to the results. Needless to say, he was thankful for the improvement. So there are outlying, I can't say that we haven't helped lots of COPD people. Not everybody gets back to us, even though after every sale, after about a month, we send an email saying, how's it going? What's happening? Is it helping? Can we give you any more advice? Do you need it anymore, etc. But also trying to find adverse reactions, because, as far as I'm concerned, I want to know everything. I want to know, is it harming anybody? Is it helping people? I want to know it all. So I'm not afraid of contacting people and saying, right, what's happening? Tell me about your life. And this is why we get a lot of feedback that's very, very positive. And, if there were anything negative, hopefully asking people for this information, it would come back, but we're just not getting it. So, I just think it's an incredibly safe product from this point of view. So yeah, but not, as I say, most people are taking it for things like respiratory allergies. So the amount of feedback that we get regarding other things is limited. But it's not to say that it doesn't help these things. So then this is another one. We've moved from me getting tons and tons of letters in the post, handwritten letters, which are hard to decipher, to people sending emails. And now obviously we've got reviews on our website directly and also on Trustpilot. So a lot of the reviews that we get are less handwritten and more, responding to emails and to requests for reviews. So there are a lot of reviews on the website, not nearly as many as we've got over the years. So this person believes that it saved their life, which is wonderful. So, and then this one again, we're looking at other things that can help. This customer, Mandy, she's basically claiming that it's helped her daughter with autism. So that's another interesting thing that it's helping her. These are reviewable on the website, so I won't dwell on them. So, another of Dr. Rudolph's concerns with it was that it wouldn't be tackling the root cause. Now, we know that the inhalers and everything else that they're trying to sell essentially don't tackle the root cause. They know enough about these diseases to really help you, but they choose to go along a route that is just supports their long-term bottom line. So they're not tackling the root cause. Okay, we know that. Does Yamoa tackle the root cause? Not with everybody. Certainly not with everybody. As you know, I've shown the results that Dr. Nigel Eccles got up from the survey he did. But you've got there's no harms involved in trying it. It could help. It could be extraordinary. It could be something that you need to continually take. But would you rather continually take that than your current medications? I'm not saying, replace your medications. Some people need to continue taking their medications. Certainly don't throw them away. I wouldn't advise that. Asthma particularly is a very, very dangerous condition, and anything could trigger it in the future. So even if Yamoa appears to have helped, we still encourage people to keep hold of their emergency inhalers. But the evidence is showing that for some people, it does seem to help resolve an issue, an underlying issue, on a cellular level. So we believe that for some people, and we're all different, but for some people, it may well be tackling the root cause. So this is just one last video I'm going to show you, which basically pulls out all these testimonials. It's a very brief and quick way of showing you the kind of results that we're getting.
Being out of breath never fits my schedule. But controlling my asthma with things like inhalers, exotic pills, steroids. Some of them have a list of side effects as long as my own. They frighten me more than a charging lion. Then one day a friend recommended something called Yamoa powder. I take the capsules daily. Nothing has ever had an impact on my asthma like Yamoa. There's one big change. Changes with Yamoa. You can breathe.
So yeah, that comes to almost the end of my presentation. Yeah, I just thought this was quite a good little meme, as it were. If you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. And if you're in any doubt, give Yamoa a try. It's the only way you're going to know whether it's going to help you or not. All the science and all the anecdote is not worth anything until you try it for yourself and see whether it works. And let us know. Let us know if it's working. Let us know if it's not working. Just give it a go. So I just want to very briefly introduce a couple of the other products that I do, if that's okay. So this is a sunscreen that I launched in 2014, 2016. This was as a result of my daughter being sent home from school saying, you need to provide a sunscreen for your daughter if she's going to be in the playground. We don't really use sunscreen, to be honest. We never really did. We were just sensible in the sun. But I was put in this position where I had to provide something. So I looked around, couldn't find anything that didn't have an ingredient list as long as my arm. Wasn't comfortable with that. And I thought, well, how difficult can it be? Let's just find some ingredients. What's the safest natural active ingredients that I can find? So that's non-nano zinc oxide, and it just needed a carrier to keep it on the skin. So we've got beeswax, coconut oil, shea butter, and zinc oxide. That's it, nothing else. And this product, I have to say, flew off the shelves. I just didn't anticipate it would do so well. Not because I didn't think there were other people who'd be looking for something similar. I just thought, I don't know, I hadn't actually launched it in anticipation of selling it at all. I made it, and I made too much because I bought all the high quality ingredients, but I bought it in bulk, so it was cheaper. And then I found I had too much sunscreen, so I gave it away to friends and gave it away to family, and they loved it. So then I sort of stuck a label on it and stuck it on eBay and just waited to see what happened. And of course it started selling, and I was like, oh, okay. So I came up with a name for it, and there we go. So there we now have, it's been going 2016. We're in lots of independent retailers. And the beauty of this product is the lack of ingredients. It's 4 ingredients, and we've got testimonials such as this one. I'm allergic to every single sun lotion. I've tested them all, but we can never pinpoint the thing I'm allergic to. My allergy is so bad that I can't wear makeup, lip balm, face cream if it contains an SPF. I have an allergy to UVB. It causes a small, very painful blister type rash when I go out without covering up. So she's allergic to the sun is what we're coming, allergic to the sun. This is the first sun cream that I've been able to use, and you have no idea how happy I am to some defense against the sun. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're wonderful. Take care, and I hope you're all well. And I had a long conversation with her, and basically she couldn't even hug her kids if they had sunscreen on. She couldn't even handle their clothing after they'd been swimming, or out in the sun, until everything had been washed. She couldn't touch it because she would react really badly to the sunscreens. And so, it's been a life changer for her because she can hug her kids. They all wear the same sunscreen, and it's brilliant. So, again, I work with products that I can endorse, I like to think they're life-changing, and that they have real benefits, that they're natural, sustainable, and they're products that really make people's lives, change people's lives, essentially. And this is another product that we released last year, last autumn. So this is CDQZ. It's a food supplement. It's about 3 to 4 months supply, or 2 months if you're on the Zelenko protocol, which is essentially you've got vitamin C, vitamin D, quercetin, which is a zinc ionophore, and zinc. Quercetin gets the zinc into the cell to do its thing. If you don't have quercetin with zinc or an ionophore, the zinc isn't going to do its thing. But this has been incredibly effective, and it was inspired by Dr. Zelenko's protocol for COVID. This is, it's doing very well. So it's a great product. And I think together with Yamoa, and also another product that I might well be introducing to you. No, I think we're at the end. So it's a charcoal, basically. It's here. It's a pure natural hardwood charcoal, non-activated. There's the camera. It's a non-activated hardwood charcoal in a big pot, because you can take it every day, which you can't do with activated charcoals, because activated charcoals will remove everything. Great for acute situations, great if you've had a poisoning or you've taken a drug overdose. Activated charcoal is the go-to in the emergency room. But if you want to take it on a daily basis, you need to go for something that's far less powerful, but that actually targets the bad things and leaves all the good things in the digestive system. And that's what natural hardwood non-activated charcoal will do for you. So yeah, that's it really. So I am open to questions. I hope you found it interesting and not too arduous. I was a bit worried when we were going through all those scientific papers, and I was thinking, oh my God, everybody's going to drop off this, and I've scared them away. But I'm hoping it's been interesting. Hoping you will have gained some information from it. And if you know anybody who does have allergies, asthma, hay fever, anything like that, that you will encourage them to do their own research and have a look at the product. Google it. You know, if it was not good for you, I'd have been shut down years ago. Yeah, it's incredibly effective product for a lot of people. We can't guarantee it. Everybody's different. We're all different. We all respond differently to everything. You know, one man's meat is another man's poison. But thankfully, we haven't got any poisons here. And yeah, I do hope that if you take it, you will let me know. And let me know how you get on.